design scenarios for the construction of a kayak and canoe launch in Hubbard Park. Those scenarios would then be brought to you for your review and then direction, if approved, to proceed to phase 2, which is the development of construction documents. So tonight we have agendaed your review and consideration of the design scenarios. I have Andy Meisman from Snyder and Associates here to walk you through that presentation.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I just shared my screen. Let me know when you can see that.
I can. I can't speak for everyone.
You're good, I think.
Okay. Excellent. Well, just stop me or holler if I cut out. I'm not going to share my video just to hopefully ease the burden of technology here. But I'll just jump into it. My name's Andy Meisman. I'm a landscape architect at Snyder and Associates here in our Madison office. And we put together these concept designs for the Hubbard Park canoe and kayak launch. Just to give you a quick project update to echo kind of what Leanne had mentioned, our initial concepts were created in early June. From that point, we went through a user review and comment in early August. And after that, we did an internal review of those comments, looked at the plans, looked at what we needed to update and adjusted them in the way we thought would work best. That was the end of August, and we're now at the final concept selection stage where we're at tonight. So just to give a site context, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Hubbard Park, but we just wanted to point out a few things that kind of led us to our decision about where to locate the proposed canoe and kayak launch and some of the design reasoning behind it. So up at the north, at the top end of this diagram's the Park Lodge, and the terrace slopes going south from there. Just south of that lodge, we have the proposed canoe and kayak launch circled in red there. To the east is the entry drive. Further to the south, we noted an existing shallow area, just pretty much starting at the existing storm outlet. And we're just calling it the existing beach area. It should be noted too, when we did our initial site walk here and concept, we looked at how you'd approach this site. Is it accessible for ADA compliancy? And that's something we kind of strive for in every design that we do. And that's not always practical in park settings, especially with steep slopes that we're working with here. We looked at all the alternatives and we ended up with about 100 linear feet of switchbacking, which would obviously be pretty expensive and kind of detract from the rest of the beauty that's in the park right now. So moving on here to the next slide, looking at the site inventory. Our first pass here was just to understand the park, what's there, what it looks like, some of the characteristics of it. And there's a lot of good materiality, maintenance, and just a lot of interesting architecture already in the park. And we wanted to consider that in our design aesthetic, and as well as the functionality of the launch site here. So that panorama is roughly in the spot where we're proposing that entry point to the launch right now. But we also wanted to look at too just the level of detail and see if we can carry that over into the actual design. So moving on to the next slide here of inventory. From that point, we wanted to look into the site in a little bit more detail about where would be an appropriate launch site for this canoe and kayak launch. And our initial thoughts were this beach area. It's heavily used right now. It's a little bit more approachable in terms of slope. There's a little bit gentler ways to get down to the river's edge there. But that panorama up at the top of this slide is pretty evident to showcase the riffles and generally the low water of that area. This photo was taken from, I believe, late July when I went out there, where I could walk out to about the middle of the river, and it was only around thigh height for the water level, which isn't necessarily a good thing if you're launching a water vessel. It's a little bit more dangerous. You have to walk across a lot of those cobbles that are slippery, and it's just a little bit more burdensome. So we looked to the north of that area, of the beach area, kind of where the existing graded area was, I think, for the original launch site. But it's a little bit better of an approach from the river exiting and entering. You can see there are some erosion issues there. The image on the bottom right, I believe, is almost where the launch site is located, where we've proposed it right now. But these are some of the things we considered when we did our first initial walkthroughs of the site and what it looked like. Moving on to the next slide, the precedents. Something we do for almost any project we work on is look at existing examples of what worked, and there's no shortage of examples for canoe and kayak launch sites that work. There's a whole array of ADA compliant approaches, other ones that are more severe in terms of topography. So there's a lot of different routes to go in terms of how this is designed. But one thing we do use quite a bit as a reference guide is the 2004 logical lasting launches that was put out by the National Park Service. And this is just a really in-depth guide of all these types of approaches for launching. And, you know, it ranges from beach launches to some of the hardscape stone. And it really just provides real basic starting dimensions and safety standards to consider. And that's something we kind of use from the very early onset components of design. So moving into the concepts, what we want to do is provide a couple different concept options for the site. And our first concept here, some more precedents. We looked at a really popular launch site in Madison on the Lower Yahara River here. And this is a basic approach, but it's really easy for everyone to access. It's simply just some larger stones flanked on both sides of the launch with some larger riprap boulders, but it's really accessible for everyone using it. From launching kayaks, canoes to inflatables, it's pretty easy to approach and easy to get down to the water's edge. So this is kind of the starting point of our initial concept here. Looking at the site plan now on this page shows how we might apply that kind of concept to the existing site. So the park entry, again, on the east side here, we're utilizing that existing, kind of aligning it with that existing graded area. But for this concept, we'd maintain all the large trees. We'd have to de-shrub some of the banks right here, but very minimal impact to the shoreline. We would propose riprap on any design that's almost essential in terms of long-term maintenance and care, and just making sure this structure would never float away and should help any sort of undermining if there are high water times. In this design too, in this concept, we've included a proposed bench and proposed flagstone, and these would just add to the aesthetic and kind of make a nice approach to the launch site. The red line in this diagram indicates the ordinary high water mark that we noted on our first survey and confirmed follow-up visits. So that's typically where the water is going to be on average. Obviously, that's going to fluctuate in the spring, fall, and the winter and summer. But we did include lower level stairs here below that ordinary high water mark. So in those shallower times, particularly in the fall, this is still a really easy approach to get in and out of the water. Something that should be noted too here, it's a pretty large surface area that's parallel to the current, which makes it pretty easy to exit and enter the kayak. Just to give you a general site layout of dimensions, we're looking at about 24 feet of improvements from the top of the bank to the water's edge. Would vary from about 12 feet wide all the way down to 26 and a half. That's more than enough to accommodate the largest canoe that might be on the water. Looking at this just in a diagrammatic section, when we walked out there from the bank of the river, we were able to walk out about 15 feet, and that got to be right around 3 feet in depth. So again, that helps in ease of accessing the shore here, and getting in and out of your kayak is a lot easier with a little bit of water depth there. You're not bottoming it out your water vessel there. But again, we got about a 6.5 foot fall from the top of the slope to the water's edge. So we would obviously need some stairs to get up and down that. Moving on to the next slide here, this concept, concept one still shows the perspective of what that launch improvement would look like. You can see the larger stones would be placed at the north, smaller ones to the south, to help absorb some of that current. The use diagram is pretty straightforward here. The entry drive is to the right of this diagram. This 2 would be the staging area. 3 would be your way down, and 4 would be that launching stone. You can see that parallel direction makes it real easy for families to get in and out of a kayak there if you're loading up kids or putting more stuff in your kayak. Concept 1, we looked at the quantities and costs. There's a lot of different ways to go about this. As a whole, this concept would be about $60,000 is what we estimated. We realize that's over the proposed budget, but there's certain ways we can break this down into bid areas. If it were to move into construction documents, a way for bidders to bid on this, we could kind of lump particular areas together that would still work functionally and aesthetically for the park and river users, and just a way to easily break it down here. So bid area A and B would kind of be those essentials. Again, we're going to need riprap no matter what to help stabilize the shore here. But bid area 2 might be something that we can add in if our costs for A and B work out appropriately. Bid area 3 are more of those niceties, again, the aesthetics, and not necessarily a functional component of the launch, but would be nice things to have that we can also break out in the bid areas. So that kind of breaks down concept 1 and how it would work. For concept 2, we also wanted to just explore a concrete option. Concept 1 was all stonework. Concept 2 would be a concrete approach at it, which is also another way to get down to the water. So again, we're utilizing the same site location based on our site inventory. Not a lot's changed from this diagram. It'd be a little bit smaller of a footprint because it's a more narrow design, but that ordinary high water mark's in the same spot. We're still proposing 2 stairs that would be submerged below that for low water times. Obviously, you can see from this diagram, the general site layout, it's a lot smaller. In terms of the width of it, we're at 6 feet. And again, we'll still need 24 feet of run to get down to the water. Not quite as accessible in terms of getting a lot of people down there. It'd be a little bit more of a challenge, but it's still within a threshold where you can carry a canoe or kayak down there and make your way down to the river. The section, again, is pretty similar. You can see in this diagram, though, that there's a little bit more work that has to be done in terms of concrete work with footings and forming that concrete staircase up. It should be noted, too, that the DNR will allow a stone or concrete. They prefer a stone. Over time, if stone erodes, it's not going to expose, obviously, any rebar, which would happen in the case of concrete. And that's kind of the last thing you want on a slippery staircase would be rebar poking out. So they do prefer more of a stone design for any launch site. Concept 2 in perspective, you can see it's pretty similar, just a little bit smaller. I think it loses a little bit of the aesthetic appeal, but it's still functional. It could still work as an appropriate launch to the river. Functionality in terms of use diagram doesn't change much. We've removed the flagstone at the staging area 2. A little bit narrower too on area 4 where you'd be launching from, which makes it a little bit more challenging if you've got kids or loading up for a kind of a long day on the river or exiting. Concept 2, quantities and costs. This was getting closer to the $40,000 range that the village had targeted. There's not a lot we can strip down from this design. This is kind of the bare bones of what would work out there. Both these approaches, concept 1 and 2, would be, I think they would work out great. I lean more towards 1. I think that's more fitting to the aesthetic of the park, and it would really tie it in. There's just a lot of great amenities already at that park, and the aesthetics, I wouldn't want to detract from that at all, which is why I would lean towards concept one. But moving forward, hopefully tonight we can get some feedback on the, an approved concept or approach, or shortly thereafter tonight's meeting. But from this point, we'd move to preliminary design, where we'd initiate permitting with the DNR. We would need just a general permit for this. Move into 60% review documents with the village, any updated renderings if needed. From that point, we'd move on to design and bidding with 90% check sets of the construction drawings, ensure our costs are in line, and final review and distributing the bids and the bid documents, and assisting with a construction contract. And finally, the fourth stage here would be just construction admin where needed. So that sums up both these designs. I'm willing to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Andy, this is Trustee Ursink. Just a question for you. Now, you said on the southern part of the southern part of the park, it's a bit shallow, going out about halfway into the river. Does that launching north and then people having to go south, will that affect them? Will they have to steer around those shallow points? And will there be, will we need signage so people aren't running their boats right into the shallow parts of that southern part of the river right there, where you have like the existing shallow area? So if they launch and they come right down, will that affect them?
It's a good question. I think it'll be learned knowledge after a while for people that do use that's kind of a necessity. I don't think it's too much of an obstruction if you were to launch from there. I think kind of similar to a lot of launch sites, you do have to paddle out quite a ways right away. My experience kayaking is, get out into the channel where you need to be just to avoid the banks, because there's going to be down trees and stuff like that. And this line that we drew in there obviously fluctuates a little bit with high and low water times. But yeah, people will have to kind of shift over to the west, more central into the rivers quicker. But I think it's still a better approach for a launch site up here than as opposed to on that beach area.
My other question was, and I'm sure other trustees will have the same question, is ADA accessibility. I think our village all strives to be pretty conforming to people with ADA needs. Has that been something that you guys had put any work into or thought about when designing this? Yeah,
and as I mentioned, that's one of the first things we look at when we go out to sites like this, is to get as many people out there as possible. All abilities to a launch like this. And this site's pretty challenging just because of the steepness of the slope. You can see, I'll go back to one of these sections. We're at about 32.5% slope on the existing proposed site. The beach area is a little bit more gentle, but if you were to include a fully accessible launch site, you'd end up with a little over or right around 100 linear feet of concrete switchbacking with ramps and handrails, which would be cost prohibitive and for the budget that's aligned right now. And also too, I think to a lesser degree would just distract from the quality of the park right now. A ramp would be pretty obtrusive out there, switchbacking for 100 feet. But it is something we look at for every project. If there is a good spot in a park or a site to launch from that's accessible, I think it's a little bit more of a challenge just because of the topography out on the site. But excellent question.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up that both concepts look great, and you guys did a nice job here. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if President Rozek is still.
Yep, Trustee Murphy, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. On the first design where you have kind of landings and then stairs next to them, is there a functional reason for that, or was it just aesthetically it looked neat?
It's both on the north side here. I can go to that perspective. I think that shows it a little bit more. There's a couple different reasons we did that. First of all, the larger stones could help absorb any sort of impact from the current. And if there are, if there's a real gusher where there's significant flooding, those bigger stones are going to be able to take on the force of that water more so than a typical tread would. So that's part of the reason. Another reason is it functions too as a seat stone. Right now we've looked at a couple different quarries, and we can get between 10 to 14 inches of thickness for these stones, which is perfect for seating. So it kind of functions as a bench out there, or a good place to put a lot of items. If you are getting a canoe in there and you're loading it up, there's a little bit more space for that. And overall, I think it just adds a little bit of variety in terms of the aesthetics, and it's not just a straight shot concrete or a straight shot of stone going down to the edge of the river.
I mean, it is a little more expensive, but I think this design is a lot nicer.
President Rozek?
Yes, trustee Carpenter.
I think both of these are really nice options and would be a great benefit to the park. I'm just wondering if there is any opportunity to sort of do a little bit of like a hybrid model between the two, because I think aesthetically I like option one, and I do think that that landing stone at the top of the steps would be nice, because just getting out of the water and water everywhere, it'd be nice to have a little bit more space instead of walking right into like what I would imagine would eventually be mud. But is there any way that we could, I know you had shown how you would price it out, but I know there's like a stone bench there. Is there, can we take that? I don't want to like piece apart your project at all, but is there any way to do sort of like a hybrid between the two designs to get us closer to what that budgeted amount was?
Yeah, I mean, it gets challenging. I think the hybrid is really this piecing this out, and it's kind of clustered. There's a lot of stuff going on in this little diagram, but I think the hybrid would be, maybe you could still just do option C if we really wanted to do that, which would be, the stone staircase versus a concrete staircase. And maybe we keep option D of the flagstone up there. This is kind of like the hybridized model. I think as close as we can get to getting a lot of options out there. I don't know if that answers your question, but we kind of broke this up in ways that it could be, designed and built to be kind of, you could even add on to it later if need be.
So like piecing this out, like we could do, A and B, or we could do like, is that sort of how you envisioned it?
Yeah. If C is the desirable component right here, if that's the way we want to go, just bid area 2, that's another way to look at it as well.
Okay. And do you think that that bid area 3, like, could we separate out the bench and the flagstone area? Like, could we do, a less expensive bench? I'm assuming a stone bench is pretty pricey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something too that we can design and include, but could be built later. When materials are available, or if the village finds a good source. I think it's that bench could be a wooden bench, doesn't have to be stone. And the flagstone, there's a lot of variety in stone that you could put out there that would help. Just hold that whole launch site down. But those are even flexible in terms of what we put out there.
Okay, thank you.
President Rozek, I have a question.
Trustee Stokebrand.
So it sounds like it would be nice if we could have the stone, because if and when the river floods, and it probably floods at least every year, given the storm events that we're having, it's better to have the stone than the concrete. But I like the footprint of concept 2, because Hubbard Park is not a big park, and we do a lot of stuff with that small space. And to me, the money, first of all, the money, I mean, I want to live within what we've got from the TID 3. We've got, I think is it right, 39,000 is in the budget, or was it 30 or 40? Concept 2 comes right in with the budget. It's a nice small footprint in the park that's already doing a lot of different things. If you're there during the concerts, there's a lot of people, I mean, spreading over on the grass all over. I hate to see, you know, the D, in my view, the Flagstone area, you're taking up grass for that, and I'm not in favor of that. And I think we can find someone maybe who would donate a bench. So for those reasons, I would like concept 2. I like the footprint. It's nice and small for a small park. We already have a canoe and a kayak launch, I believe, in the park just north of us in Glendale. There's a canoe launch. There's another canoe launch at the Urban Ecology Center. So I don't feel like we need a big ooh la la, you know, $60,000 canoe launch. I wonder how many people in our village actually will use a canoe launch. I think it's wonderful for us to have, but I like the small one for our small park. If I could get concept 2 with the materials of concept 1, that would be the perfect piece for me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's completely doable here. The materials of concept 1 for 2, I think what that would be C, bid area 2 here would be the smaller footprint approach with the stone integrated into it.
President Rosick?
Yes, Trustee Warren.
Thank you. You know, this is a close one for me. I mean, when I reviewed the packet, I was thinking that I was more in favor of concept 2, but looking through and going through this presentation, I mean, aesthetically, I find concept 1, I think it's more aesthetically pleasing, obviously, in addition to the benefits of having stone. I do understand Trustee Stokebrand's concern about having too big a footprint within the park, but it seems, you know, judging by kind of the scale of the pictures, I think I'm okay with that. I do like Trustee Carpenter's idea of maybe taking the bench out and doing that later, or doing a wooden bench or something like that, just to get us closer to where we want to be within our budget. I do think that especially in these pandemic times, we want to stick as close to the budget as possible, but I also want to get us to the best solution for this park and the one that kind of fits with it aesthetically the best and environmentally the best. And I think this is a close call, but right now I'm leaning towards concept 1 with slight modifications as proposed by Trustee Carpenter.
President Rozak?
Yes, I was just going to call on you, Trustee Bockhorst.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll try to remember how to lower my hand on the phone. So yeah, I was going to say that initially I also was leaning more towards some of the ideas that Trustee Stokebrand had said, but I can almost verbatim reiterate what you said, Trustee Warren. And also you had mentioned a great point that during a pandemic, budgetary constraints are important, but also we have to remember that people have so many fewer internal inside opportunities for not only entertainment, but for well-being and quality of life. And one thing that we've noticed on the Milwaukee River, especially downtown where I work, is a higher increase of usage of the waterways. And the west side of the village has been, there've been many claims and a lot of them probably true, but we really have invested a lot on the lake side, on the bluff, and all these different means. And trust me, I'm an aquatic person. I would love to see us even go further on both sides, both the river and the lake. But here's an opportunity for us to do something that's not only aesthetically pleasing, and that's to me the most minor aspect of this. If stone were not better than concrete for a variety of reasons, I'd go for the cheaper element here. But just the actual usage and just allowing people in Shorewood and to launch from this site, I think is great. I am very happy also that we get to rely on the TID money for this. There's so many different reasons that I'm just elated that this is happening. But I want to make sure that we are doing what's best, of course, not only for the entire village, but the whole surrounding community. And yes, we do have boat launches in a variety of other municipalities. But in Shorewood, we have a high percentage of people who do use the waterways, both the river and the lake. And then one other thing I will say is about safety and public safety. The more eyes that you have on in a certain area, generally the safer it is. So using this, not just for a beer garden or wedding venues, et cetera, or dog walking or trail usage, I'm elated that we're doing this. And again, going back to the pandemic, we don't know how long this is going to last, but what we do know is that people have to find safe outside alternatives to inside enjoyment. And this is one more area that we as trustees and at the local governmental level can increase, again, a variety of aspects that benefit our constituents and the well-being. So I would pretty much go with what Trustee Warren said, sorry, in more than the words that he said.
Is there any other trustee that has not spoken yet? Then I'll just give my comments. Could you flip back to concept 2? I apologize.
Oh, this image, or we could go to the cost?
That's good right there.
Okay.
I am not so concerned about the cost because it is in a TID and we only pay 1/4 of those costs, the village, and we share those costs with our other partners on the taxing bill. But I am in favor of option concept 2, as Trustee Stokebrand had mentioned. I do like the smaller footprint. It is a small park, and I think that it fits better within that setting. So thank you so much. I think you did a fabulous job.
Hey, President Rozak, I'm really sorry to do this.
Sure, Trustee Bachhorst.
And I appreciate that you mentioned that, because that was the point that I had forgotten to mention, was that it is the fact that we do only pay a portion of this, but it benefits all of our other contributors to the TID. And this is coming from all over Milwaukee County. So this is something that I think will enhance their life as well, not just Shorewood. So anyway, whatever we can do that can maximize the enjoyment and the quality of life for everyone, I'm supportive. So thank you.
Welcome. Okay, and I just have a hard time seeing everyone because the screen is a presentation, so I apologize on that. Is there anybody else on the board that has further questions or comments?
I did have one question. So did I see that the TID has budgeted, what was the amount that the TID was budgeting for this?
The 2020 budget has a total of $50,000 for Hubbard Park improvements. That amount also includes an estimated $8,000 to $10,000 for a handrail on the riparian path. So we're assuming $40,000.
Okay, and then the $5,500 to get to finish phase 2, does that come out of general fund, or that's not in the TID, right? We're paying for that out of.
No, I believe, though Rebecca can correct me if I am wrong, I believe that is also TID funded.
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess my point is concept 2 fits in the TID budget, and I think it fits the space, and it gives us what we need. It gives us a nice canoe launch on the west side. So I support concept 2.
Okay. Anybody else?
This is Trustee Ursink. So from a budget perspective, if we go with concept 1, where does the remainder of those funds come from? So that $60,000, if we have around $40,000 budgeted for this through the TID, where does the $20,000 come from?
The TID.
It comes from the TID, okay. And I just want to make a point that, something like this has the ability to bring people in from outside of other communities. So I'm always liking options that can bring people to Shorewood that might not be from Shorewood. There's always young families looking to come to different neighborhoods. And we're always we're going to be a constant battle with Whitefish Bay and Wauwatosa. And I think things like this really stand us apart. Anyways, that's my point. Brings people to the community.
President Rosa.
I had a point too. I wanted to.
Trustee Amenta and then Rebecca.
Yeah, I just want to say, this is going to be here for like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And I don't think, I just think for something like this that's going to be around for a long time. And we don't do a lot of, well, we did do the pathway going into Hubbard Park, but we don't do a lot of amenities in the parks. And I just think for something that's going to be around for that long, I don't know that I think we should think about that and not be so cost conscious, just because it's going to be a very long-term improvement way after we're gone.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I just wanted to let you know that Michael Maher has raised his hand to speak.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So is everybody on the board done with their questions at this time for the consultant? Okay, and if so, then we will go to public comments and questions. Mike Maher. Can he unmute himself?
Unmuted. Hello, good
There you
evening.
Hi.
Thank you for considering this and having such a thorough discussion. Just want to note a couple of comments. We're on the Milwaukee Coalition Greenway Partnership as a community with a number of other partners. One thing they have noted recently with the COVID, and it's been noted in your discussion, there is a lot of new users, canoe and kayak users on the river. And they were very excited about Shorewood's proposed canoe launch. And they also talked about an effort that they're going to put forth to educate new users on river safety and also on the hazards they may encounter in the river. Downstream from this is the Schlitz Ice Dam. So there are challenges in the river, and they're committed to maximizing and enhancing the use of the river. The other thing they noted was there are lots of other users besides canoe kayakers that would use this landing. I know the river keepers mentioned that they do river trainings where they bring youth down. These steps and these larger steps would be nice places to have classes sit and to enter and exit the river. We also have a lot of trout fishing going on. Actually, this stretch of the river is one of the best in the Midwest around Hubbard. So there's a lot of users that this would provide a real nice entryway into the river for those users. The larger design also, as had been mentioned, is a lot safer for loading and unloading your kayak and canoe, getting your children in and getting out into the stream. So if the costs came in we're close to budget, it would be nice to have the limestone steps with the larger area to load and out of. The other thing a lot of the coalition members mentioned that have worked on canoe launches on the Milwaukee River is the winter damage to these launches. So the heavier stone would probably hold up, particularly the larger steps. I know the Milwaukee River Foundation has a launch down near Humboldt in the river. They get a lot of ice damage on their railings and stuff. Also up in the Lincoln Park launch has damage. So this simple heavy stone canoe launch really is a good approach for minimizing any potential storm ice damage and high water, which we will be encountering with our current climate. So I really appreciate the board's commitment to a quality launch and to consider providing this to our residents and all the users of the river. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Maher.
Is there
anything else?
Yeah, there's Jennifer has raised her hand. Jennifer, if you'd like to unmute yourself and give your name and address.
Yeah, Jennifer Cooney Vulpes. I just have to say I agree with Mike Maher with what he said about having this larger space for exiting the river. and having more space for children coming out of the canoes. What I appreciate, I am always looking at the aesthetics, of course, but the concept one, with those large steps where people can sit and sort of, commune with the river. I think it's a really great way for the public to actually experience the river in other ways than just walking alongside it or going in a canoe. They can actually sit there and watch the fish go by. They can watch fishermen out in the river. So that's just my comment.
I think that's it for public comment.
Yes,
I can make a motion if you recommend.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would move authorization of Hubbard Park canoe and kayak launch for phase 2 for concept 1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Warren, a second by trustee Ursink. Is there any other comments or discussion by the board members? If not, Sarah.
I would just,
sorry, trustee Stokebrand.
I would like to offer an amendment to amend the original motion to remove the, to keep it, I think the 49,500, I think I was going to remove the flagstone at the top to preserve more grass in our park since it is so small, and to take out the bench. I think that if we go with this, we have the steps down and those almost act like a bench. And so that's why I'll make an amendment to the original motion to remove, I think it's part C.
Are you saying to strike?
I'm sorry, bid area 3.
To strike. So you're moving to make an amendment.
Right.
To strike bid
area 3.
Period. I'll second that. So we have a motion and a second on the amendment. Is there any further discussion or questions from board members?
I would, so trustee Ursink, real quick. I would probably get on board with the stone bench. I think that's probably something we could do without, even though it'd be a nice addition. But that flagstone area, I agree with Jessica Carpenter, trustee Carpenter, that that area is going to be completely worn out if people are using this frequently. So I do think that that's a necessity to have up there, because it's just going to be turned into mud eventually, and the grass will be worn out if we see the usership that we want to see with this. So I feel like it's a necessity. Once people get up that ramp, they're going to be wet, and they're going to want to stand and dry off somewhere, or their boats are going to be wet. So I think this is I think that's a necessity. But the stone bench, that's something I think we could take out.
Point of order, just for is Attorney Bear on the phone or on the call Zoom? Attorney Bear, if just proper procedure, we have a motion and an amendment. If for any reason someone wanted to just propose to take out the stone bench, which order would you suggest voting in? Voting on the amendment, seeing if that passes and fails, and then seeing if there's another amendment?
Sure. I always advocate for the simplest approach so everyone fully understands exactly what they're voting on. There's a couple of different things you could do. Certainly you can proceed, and if the motion to amend fails, someone else could bring another motion to amend that would address merely the stone bench as opposed to the flagstone. If there's further discussion and it seems like there's consensus on it, someone could ask if there would be unanimous consent. Even if the person that made the motion agrees, you might have unanimous consent to amend it. But I think the clearest path forward, so that everybody understands what they're voting on, would be simply to vote on the amendment as proposed, and then see if there's another amendment that might relate to either adjust the flagstone or the stone bench or some other aspect of it. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? I can't see hands, so just.
Could you repeat the amendment? I'm so sorry. My internet went out for a second when the amendment was proposed.
Sure. So the amendment is to strike bid area 3, which would be to remove the flagstone area and the stone bench.
I guess I just have one concern. Perhaps Leanne can talk about this. The flagstone, is that a small aggregate? So someone, when the Parks Department goes in to mow, is the mower going to go and scatter all the flagstones, or are these inlaid?
No, these would be flagstone, so they'd be large pieces of stone, like stepping stones. So that would not be a concern with the mow. If I could offer just a slightly different reminder, we talked in the memo and about the possibility of you could direct us to design alternative or concept 2, and then structure the bidding document such that the flagstone area, the bench, are included as alternates, so that depending on how those bids come back, at that point you could either make a decision to include them or not, but you would know their prices and you would have that information at that time.
Did you mean, I'm sorry, Leanne, did you mean to say concept 1?
I'm sorry, I did. Thank you for that catch. So
sounds
yeah, so we would fully design concept 1, and then those bid areas would be included as alternates. So you would not have to award them.
I think I understand what you're saying, and for Trustee Stokbrand's clarification, if she needs it, which she may not, you're saying that you can design it, and for cost purposes, you could include it in the bid to see what the costs come in at. But if a trustee, Stokbrand or any other, was more concerned about the design, then that wouldn't address that necessarily.
It would, because of the way that this is broken down. So your base bid, very similar to how we do road projects, when we do any type of alternate related to, awarding water main work, anything really, your construction drawings would include all of the design components. The base bid would include the stairway and the riprap. The alternate bid would then include your flagstone area and your stone bench. So you could vote to award the base bid, and then if you chose to, you could also award an alternate to do the pavers, the flagstone paver area, and or to do the bench. Both of them, one of them, neither of them.
Okay.
But it preserves all of your options to that time.
And Trustee Stokbrand, do you have an objection to amending your amendment to say that?
No, I'll just withdraw my amendment.
Okay, and what does the original motion say?
The original
I'm fine with, I'm the second to the amendment. I'm fine with withdrawing it, but I may make another amendment depending on what the underlying motion says.
Sure. So the original motion was to move authorization of Hubbard Park Canoe and Kayak Launch Phase 2 for Concept 1.
I think just for the record, we should ask if there's unanimous consent or if anybody has any objection to removing it.
Thank you. Does anybody else have objection to Trustee Stokbrand and myself removing our amendment? Okay, hearing none, it will be removed. Now, do we need to make, I guess I should ask either the attorney or maybe Leanne, is that motion sufficient, or does there need to be an amendment if someone would like to parcel out those two pieces for alternative bids?
Leanne, I'm not sure how it was structured. Was it originally structured as an either or do you need specific language or guidance from the board?
I don't necessarily need specific language, but I think for documentation for future reference, I think it would probably be a good idea to note that you're directing staff to prepare the concept 1 with the flagstone area and stone bench as alternate bids.
Okay, so would the original motion maker like to have any objection to saying that in the motion, and the second, and then I'll ask for unanimous consent.
I mean, again, as the original motion maker, I'm comfortable with proceeding with this. I'd be open to taking out to the bench, but flagstone I'm not comfortable with. So, so no, I'm not comfortable with inserting that language.
And President Rozak?
Yes, Trustee.
Andy, the consultant, that was basically my question, and that was what he had explained, was that like exactly how it is on our screens right now shows that the 3 bid areas. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy and or Leanne, that we're going to get back the bid documents, which will show bid area 1, bid area 2, and bid area 3. And we could take out within bid area 3, D and or E, or we could take out, you know, A. And that's sort of why he structured it this way, so that we could get kind of a parceled bid that we could, you know, a la carte sort of choose.
Is that
You could not take out A.
I know, I know you couldn't take out A. I'm sorry, that was a bad example. Maybe take out B. I'm just saying, wasn't that the whole point of
Yes.
building it
Yeah.
this way?
Yeah, that was it. But really, my
Sorry, bad
understanding
choice
of
letters.
yeah, your concept to this point would be A, B, and C would be part of the base bid. So those would all be awarded. Then you would have discretion to award D and or E or neither.
As the motion stands right this minute, as Trustee Warren stated it, and it was seconded, would we have the option to parcel out any piece we didn't feel, you know, the board, could we by majority parcel out when the bids came back, bid area 3?
Only if you have them listed as alternates.
Okay, so we need an amendment. So Trustee Carpenter, I think that was a no, that Andy had it wrong, or stated it incorrectly. Am I saying that right?
No, Andy was not incorrect.
Okay, but as the motion stands, if the motion passes, we are adopting, we do not have the opportunity to take any of these pieces out.
I'll move to amend the motion
Thank you.
to direct staff to bid bid area 2 and area 3 as alternates. Or I'm sorry, just bid area 3 as alternates. So that's just the flagstone area and the stone bench.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the amendment is moved by Trustee Amenta, seconded by Trustee Stokebrand. Is there any further discussion or questions from board members? If not, clerk, can you call the roll?
Yep. This is for the amendment to bid area 3 out as alternates. Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Amenta.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Nay.
Trustee Carpenter.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Nay.
Trustee Warren.
Nay.
President Rosick.
Aye.
Amendment passes 4-3.
Okay, so now do we vote on the amended motion?
Correct.
That's correct.
And can you read the amended motion?
Yep. This is to move authorization of Hubbard Park Canoe and Kayak Launch Phase 2 for Concept 1 with bidding area 3 as alternates.
Okay, any further discussion by trustees? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Amenta.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Carpenter.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
President Rosick.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all your work. I'm hoping my screen goes back to the other view.
I will stop sharing. Thank you guys for your time and everything. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to getting this built and testing it out. So,
All right, great, thank you. Look forward to the bid documents.
yep, take care, guys.
Take care. Okay, our next special order of business is 4B, an update on the initiative presentation, Human Relations Commission. Tyler?
Yeah, hi. I'm looking at the other people on the call and I don't believe I see any Human Relations Commission members. So I'm just going to give just a really brief description of what they just accomplished. Obviously, during the spring and summer, we had some events which changed the initiatives and the priorities of the Human Relations Commission based on what they originally presented to you back earlier this year. So after their Shorewood Speaks in July, they met to put together some revised initiatives and priorities, which they just finalized at their last meeting in September. So we just wanted to bring that forward to the village board so that you were aware of those initiatives that they'll be working on. Each of the subcommittees, which as a reminder, they have 3 subcommittees, education, policy, and data. And each of those subcommittees will be continuing to work on these initiatives moving forward. So there's no action needed. It's if you have any general questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is just more of a FYI.
And well, President Rosick. Oh, thank you. I can read your lips. This just came as this is something that reflects just a kind of reshuffling of the initiative process to focus on racial equity in light of the events that are, I would say, that not only occurred last spring and summer, but continue to occur today. So I view this as kind of more of a letting the board know and making sure that the lines of communication between the board and the HRC are open, and we're all in the loop on what the focus is. But that's really why we kind of refigured the priorities in light of some of the social justice movements that have occurred over the past few months.
Thank you. And just to identify, Trustee Warren is the liaison to the Human Relations Commission for our board. Is there any other comments or questions from board members? If not, you got anything else, Tyler?
Nope, that's it.
All right, and we do not need to take a vote, correct?
No vote.
All right, well, thank you so much for that update. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We will move on to the next agenda item then, which is the consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda may be acted upon by one motion. If in the judgment of any village board member, a consent agenda item needs discussion, the item can be placed in the items removed from the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion moved by Trustee Bachhorst, seconded by Trustee Carpenter. Is there anybody or any items that need to be removed? Trustee Menta, it looks like your lips are moving.
That's like an infomercial, come on.
Are you on mute? You're on mute.
Call the question.
5B, 5B.
Call the question.
5B, okay, so.
I was looking at the document and so I didn't have my thing. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. So we'll remove 5B. Any other removals?
I think I saw Trustee Warren do some hand signals for 5C. I'm joking.
Yeah. Sign language over there. Okay. All right, then we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of 5B and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We'll now go to item 5B. Consider village board special meeting minutes, August 31st, 2020. Trustee Menta.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have to. What page is it on? Does anybody? I'm on my laptop, so I'm going back and forth. I don't. Okay, wait. I'm almost.
52. 3.
53. Okay. There was just one. page where, I think it's on the second page. And okay, so in the middle, we have trustee Carpenter makes a motion. And we voted on that motion. And the next paragraph says, trustee Warren and trustee Ursing seconded to direct staff to pursue option B. But that can't be oh, trustee Warren moved and trustee Ursing seconded. Okay. I thought it was saying they both seconded something, but so maybe just insert trustee Warren moved. I'm sorry, that just got me confused there.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that one insertion.
I'll move to approve the minutes of whatever, August 31st. Now I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry.
Second. I'll second.
And we have a motion by trustee Amenta to approve the August 31st, 2020 minutes with that one insertion, and a second by trustee Stokebrand. Any further discussion by the board members?
Yep.
Trustee Blackhorse.
So I would just like to take this time to just recommend that going forward, we look at a more simplified version of the minutes. And we spent a lot of time, not only on these minutes, but on other minutes, and a lot of money. So
I think, just for the record, I do think that the total was $2,000 something. I did get the total from Sarah.
Wait, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, just, I know we had an estimate that was very high for the minutes. Sarah, was the total about 2,000 something? I just wanted the board to be updated.
The estimate for the July or for the June 10th and June 15 minutes was just over 2,000. I don't have the exact amount. I can email everyone tomorrow if they would like.
I just wanted to give them an update. And
wait, I'm sorry, estimate for revising the revised minutes that we outsourced already?
No, for what was already done.
For the
per minute? So we spent 2,000 on each per minute?
No,
or
together.
Oh,
total
okay.
bill.
Yeah, it came in lower than expected. I just want to share that with the board. And I do believe that minutes are on, minute discussion is on future agenda item. Is that correct, Rebecca? Okay, thank you. Trustee Ursing?
I also just want to bring up again that we should be utilizing our YouTube videos a lot more and be able to time code discussions and relate it to the videos online, so it's easier to reference. We go through the trouble of putting all these videos on YouTube. We might as well give people within the minutes the correct time code so they can find where in these videos this information is at. I think it'd be very helpful. It's very easy to do, and it would go a long way.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Ursink. Any other comment by board members? If not, are we ready for the vote?
Okay. Trustee Carpenter.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Menta.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Blackhorse. President Rosick.
Aye. All right, the vote passes 6-1. The next item is a public hearing, of which we have none. So we'll move on to agenda item number 8, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Discussion may follow. Comment on non-agenda items or discussion and action may come at a future meeting. Is there anyone in the public who has registered or is here tonight who would like to speak?
No one emailed me ahead of time. Oh, someone did raise their hand. I have Daryl Brockman. If you would like to unmute yourself and give your name and address, please.
Hi, I don't, if you can hear me, my name is Lynette Brockman actually, and I'm at 4050 North Downer Avenue. And what I'm wondering is I have 2 children right now that are enrolled at St. Robert's, and we have, I have questions regarding like the way that the health department and the school are working together on our plan to be back in class, which we are, and we're doing in person every day, no virtual. They've added 67 kids to enrollment. And as I've asked questions when I've had concerns, it's come to my attention that our plan was never approved by the health department. And when the health department has reached out, there doesn't seem to be good communication or things changing. And so I'm wondering if the board would at any point think about any type of, I don't know what the right word would be, but setting guidelines, or I don't know if the right word is mandate, on, you know, concerns that we have. Like, for instance, an example would be in Milwaukee, they have things set up where if there's 2 kids in a cohort that are positive, they would close down that cohort, or if they have 3% of their population of the school that are sick, they would go virtual. We don't have anything like that. And when I talk to the health department or to the school, they both, you know, they're not, I'm not getting a clear answer. But when I talk to people like at DPI or within the health department, like the state health department, they're kind of saying that that it might have to come from a village, like it would come from a village board, or, you know, that way to get to that. And I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are, or as to doing something like that in the future.
Can we hear from either Rebecca or Attorney Bear on that, on whether or not the legislative body of a municipality can set rules for the school district, for schools? Attorney
Well,
Bear.
I think I think the question here is to what extent the municipality would be able to regulate. It sounds like we're talking about, I was taking notes here, the private school?
Yes.
St. Robert's, right. I think the answer, the short answer is it would be limited, but it's certainly something we can look into. It hasn't been an issue that has come up previously, but you know, and I don't want to speak for the health department in terms of what they can and can't do. You know, of course, depending, you know, if there was an imminent health threat, you know, they would be able to step in and take certain actions. But absent that, you know, I'm not sure how much the health department is going to be able to regulate the day-to-day operations of a private school, even within the, you know, the municipality here. But it's certainly something that we can take a closer look at in conjunction if that's something the board wants us to take a look at.
And before the board gets into any full-blown discussion about this, because it's not on the agenda and this is public comment period, Rebecca, is this something that you can look into and speak with and follow up on?
I'd be happy to relay the concerns to Director Christensen. My understanding is that the school board for St. Robert's makes the decision on the opening plans for St. Robert's, and that they have the health department to consult and seek guidance from in terms of how they develop their reopening plan. I'd be happy to relay the concerns to Director Christensen. But similar to how the Shorewood School District has made decisions with regards to how they're going to operate in their facility, St. Robert's would do the same.
And just to reiterate on that, I think there would have to be some kind of an imminent health threat for them to be able to take action and step in a private setting like that. But you know, again, I based upon the policies and procedures that have been put in place, there's been a lot of fast-moving, you know, issues, and there's been a lot of fast-moving, you know, things that have happened at the state level, but I'm personally not aware of something that would really give the village carte blanche to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the private school. But you know, again, this isn't an issue that we've ever addressed before. We've never been in a pandemic like this before.
And Trustee Bockhorst.
So, yes, so the state law, of course, supersedes any private, parochial, or whatever kind of rules are in place. And you're right, Ms. Brockman, I'm glad you asked this question. You're not the first one that's asked this question. And I've been contacted by teachers and other parents at St. Robert's, and I was going to bring this up in our items of future consideration. But we at the state, Tony Evers' mandate is pretty clear on what is permissible in the state of Wisconsin. This isn't the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is kind of its own private entity and its own jurisdiction. This is still, and I know, Nathan, you're the attorney here, but it still is a school that resides in our municipality and in the state of Wisconsin. So indoor, again, I think we have a mask mandate that states if you're indoors, and unless, we all know what we've spent a lot of time on this. And then we also have the state mandate, and whichever one is more restrictive is the one that applies according to the governor. And we also just recently passed our outdoor mandate in the village of Shorewood. So I think Ms. Brockman, it's a great question that she has, and it sounds like she's a concerned individual of the municipality and a parent of two, and she's also a resident of our municipality as well. So we don't, according to our mandate, and I mean our ordinance, we don't have the enforcement power, but we are not, the buck doesn't stop here. So if there are general health concerns and issues that are coming up, I think as fiduciaries and people who have, taken an oath of office here to represent and provide the welfare and safety of our community, that this is something that we should definitely take seriously. So,
Trustee Bachers, Nathan and Attorney Bear, I don't know what the best way to do this is because we're in public comment, but if there is any exception in the state law for schools, which I know there is, I don't know how that applies one way or another, but should we follow up? Should you report back to the board? I don't know what the proper process would be for, since it was brought up under public comment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's up to you. I mean, there's obviously overlapping jurisdictions. Of course, if there's a state law that says that X and Y and Z must happen in any setting, that would certainly apply to a public or a private school setting. But generally on reopening plans and what happens in the daily day-to-day operation inside that school, unless there's an imminent public health emergency that it needs to be addressed by the health department. Generally, those are not going to be regulated at the municipal level or the state level.
Can you right. Is there a way just to report back, just maybe a memo?
Sure. I mean, we can certainly kind of try to lay out the overlapping jurisdictions and how those all play together, and state versus local, and we can certainly do that.
Does anyone have any objections to that, to the attorney providing the board with a memo?
I have no objections to providing the board with a memo, but I think we all know that state law supersedes local, and federal law supersedes state.
Right.
So we do have mandates that are statewide, and it sounds to me that Ms. Brockman is presenting it, and I could have mistaken this, but she does have concerns regarding the health and safety at the school, unless I misheard that.
No, I absolutely do. I got them to do the masks inside for all grades based on the mask mandate that you guys put in place. There were some grades that they weren't going to do that with, and we got that. I'm kind of picking away at the plan and all my concerns, but we're still doing a lot of things outside without masks, including recess. It's kind of like if you're outside, you can't get it. And I agree that it's less risky, but they're letting the kids take their masks off during recess, which people in the community have witnessed, and there are pictures. So they're letting the kids, they're not socially distancing, and they're taking their masks off during recess. So there's a lot of concerns I have, and this has been a 2-month process that I've been asking questions, and I did hear from someone within the health department that they kind of look to, in North Shore, that they kind of look to the village boards, but that they've ran into kind of the village boards. They felt that when they wanted to set a guideline, that some of like the different village, because we have so many, that some of them were saying, well, we're not the same as Bayside. Bayside's not the same as Whitefish Bay. And so they kind of backed off from that. But they have said that if there were some, you know, whatever, and I, at this point, I guess I would, I just kind of wanted to put this out there and see what it is that, I'm not exactly sure what my request is because I don't know what you can do. So it's kind of confusing for me. But I just wanted to know if this is something that, if we're concerned about, could we get a list? Could we give it to you? And would you be able to help us in that way? Because they're saying, well, if the village board would say that. And I guess the other question I have for you is, with the way that you wrote the mask mandate for outside, it doesn't really say, you know, playgrounds or whatever. And maybe this is something that you probably didn't even think of. I mean, Shorewood School District was going to go virtual. When they open up, what will you, you know, like, will you guys have an idea of what you want to see? And, you know, for that, and I guess that's what I'm asking.
Thank you so much. I think there's two questions for the memo, Nathan. One is, what rights do we have as the municipality to mandate something over the schools? And second is an enforcement question. We do have the mask ordinances for outdoors and indoors. And what enforcement mechanism do we have if they're not being followed? And there's a third component that Ms. Brockman just brought up, which is, you know, do you guys stand behind your outdoor mask ordinance at this moment? I don't think that's a question for the attorney. If any trustee would like to put that on a future agenda item, we certainly can put it there to reopen that issue.
Yeah, and to finish my statement, we are the decision makers to answer the question. The federal government has failed us. The state government is a big political quagmire, and they have kicked the can down to us at the local level. So we are the legislative body, as we all know. So we can take up this issue. And whether or not St. Robert's has to abide by this, I guess that's up to the lawyers. But it sounds to me that potentially they're not. And we don't have.
They said
wait, Ms. Brockman, Trustee Ursink.
You know, Ms. Brockman, I share your concerns, and I feel really bad for all the families there right now. I've heard from numerous people within the school, teachers in the school, and parents that are all very stressed out about this. The cleaning practices in the school, from what I understand, they're using ozonated water to clean everything and to clean everything off. Kids not wearing masks outside. There's already 2 confirmed cases. You know, all of these kids play together with other kids, you know, so we've done such an effective job as a community of restricting this virus. And for this school to have opened up, I mean, they gave it a shot, but now this is turning into something that could be a bit of a crisis for Shorewood. It could spread fast. And I do think we need to pay attention to what's going on at St. Robert's.
Thank you, Trustee Ursink. And Ms. Brockman, do you have any last comments?
I just wanted to say thank you for listening. And I hope that, you know, like I've been clear, I have so much in my head and I'm nervous, but I hope that you guys understand. I mean, half of our body isn't even from Shorewood. And so, you know, if you look at the numbers, a lot of them are from Milwaukee. And if you look at the numbers around us, they're just going up. And we do have 2 cases. I can't believe we only have 2. I think that with the things that are happening, I think we'll have more. I think that they're not understanding that people can be asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic. And I think that, you know, with the way things are being done, I think that it could, and hopefully it won't, but I think it could change quickly. I was even told today that I didn't have to I kept one of my children home because one of them had close contact, and they said that I didn't have to keep the second one home. And I'm like, it's a sibling. If one has close contact, the one of them should. And I'm very frustrated. And, you know, so I hope that something can be worked out. She did say that she would listen to guidelines if they were set. So, and again, when I speak to the health department, they're saying that they're looking towards boards, just like Tammy said. So whatever help, whatever I can fill in for anyone, if they want to contact me, please do. But I'm really concerned. So thank you so much for listening and answering my questions. I really appreciate it.
Could you send us an email so we have your contact?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brockman, and we look forward to the memo from Attorney Bear by next board meeting. Okay. With that, is there anybody else for public comment?
I do not have anybody with their hands raised at this time.
All right. With that, I will close citizens to be heard and move on to new business. Rebecca, before I do so, we have a closed session today, is that correct?
Correct. I've informed Attorney Worth that you are entering the items for new business and that I will reconnect with him in an hour if you've not concluded before then.
Okay. I just saw it pop up at 9, so it's okay to move
sure.
on. Okay.
Yep, I scheduled it for 9, not knowing when you would be adjourned with your regular business.
Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. So we are on 9A, consider new citation and parking management software provider.
We're going to turn it over to Mark for this one.
Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much. In the background over the past several months, we've been evaluating our citation and parking permit management software solution options. The original Duncan contract had expired at the end of last year, but there was a lot of pending issues related to parking that we really thought would be best to let kind of go through their processes before we would really get into potentially switching software providers. So using that time, we've gotten some opportunities to do product demonstrations and to get some pricing quotes from not only Duncan for a renewal, but also for G-Techna and another company, T2, both prominent providers of these types of services. I do want to add that since the drafting of this memo, T2 has come back with sufficient documentation on their proposal for us to do a cost analysis. And just for the board's reference, that cost, that average cost per year is approximately $100,000. Duncan as well has gotten back to us since the drafting of this memo that they are able to do a solution with restrictions that limit 2 permits per household, although they are advocating that they would prefer us to switch to their new platform when making that conversion. So other than that, the real take of the memo is we think there's an opportunity here to improve on our software system and delivery of these services with the G-Techna model. It also provides approximately $30,000 a year in cost savings compared to the Duncan renewal price. I do want to mention that the Duncan renewal price has already been built into the budget. I had that information absent any direction to make a change, so that's already built into the budget. But this would offer an opportunity for the board to consider moving in a new direction.
Mark, can you, for the board, what does the purchasing policy say for purchases over 100,000? Just to get 3 quotes?
I have not. I hate to say that I don't have that policy memorized. I'm pretty sure the purchasing policy would require an RFP for services. Rebecca, do you know if that's the case?
I would think so.
Yes.
Okay, so are you asking the board tonight to move forward with an RFP?
That could certainly be one direction. I'm providing the board that the staff has done independently this research, and these are the information that we've collected.
But you're not.
I guess the actual request is to contemplate a new service provider if the board is comfortable with that decision.
So it would be, our motion would be to move to request staff to put out an RFP for service provisions related to parking and parking management? Is that?
Well, that's not the motion that's included in the materials, but that would certainly be an alternative motion the board could make.
And I apologize.
I do want to express that with the prospective implementation of the new parking program approved by the village board at the previous meeting, time would be of the essence if we are considering switching software providers.
My only question because of that is, are you asking us to waive under the provisions of the purchasing policy because of there's certain provisions where the board can waive the right to go out for an RFP or request for proposals? It's like this is I don't have it in front of me, but this I don't think meets it. So I don't know that the motion in the packet just to approve something tonight is proper or meets our policy.
I guess it would be my interpretation that if the board chose to take action, they would implicitly be waiving their own policy.
So to waive
again,
higher policy
at your discretion.
Because there are some in the purchasing policy, you can go with a sole, provider and then it has certain criteria. These don't meet it, so you would just be waiving your policy. Okay, all right. With that, does anybody have any questions? Trustee Amenta.
Yeah, my question is, I know whenever we've talked about making changes to parking rules or policies, there's always been a cost with Duncan. Oh, that's going to be really hard for them to program, and that's going to cost a lot for them to program, and they'll put that into our future anyway. It always seemed like really cumbersome and expensive. So with this new vendor, is there more flexibility in making those types of changes?
Yes, there's substantial improved functionality in the platforms I've seen. Again, in full disclosure, the first time I heard about Duncan launching a new platform was about 4:30 this afternoon. So I have not viewed that new platform. That, I guess, doesn't surprise me, given our tenuous history with working through different processes with the current software provider.
Well, I take issue with that. That's not necessarily fair because we didn't put out a request for proposal, so we didn't ask for the information. Is there a third provider that you had mentioned? And then I'll call on Trustee Ursink. Did you mention there was?
Yes, that was T2 Solutions. And again, since this memo was drafted, I have gotten the rest of the documentation needed to estimate the average cost per year, and that cost came in at about $100,000.
Okay, Trustee Ursink, and then Trustee Carpenter.
So Mark, you're recommending going with Techna. Is that correct? Techna?
That's correct.
And if you could just kind of summarize why you think this is, why you think we should be doing this now instead of going through this this process that President Rozak is talking about. What's the concern for the immediacy here, and how it relates to the parking? How we plan to move forward with parking?
Well, my overriding concern at this point is the ability to implement the policy direction of the village board using the current system in the time frame allowed.
Which is?
January 1st.
So 4 months.
So,
we can't
so
turn
we would have to implement all the necessary changes by about mid-December to implement the board's decision on January 1st. I would say either through delays of going through an RFP process and or just asking Duncan to accommodate those changes, and then we would consider other software options in the future. We would not be able to meet that timetable.
And just to be clear, we would be potentially saving around $30,000 by transitioning the software.
That's correct.
Trustee Carpenter, then Trustee Warren.
So since we did not do an RFP, how do we know that there's not another vendor out there that could save us $45,000?
Yeah, you never know.
So, I mean, because, you know, I mean, in paper, looking at the packet, you know, to me, it seems initially like a slam dunk, like, you know, yeah, we're going to win, we're going to save $30,000, but to not follow our process and to not have an RFP and to not see what else is out there. You know, I guess my concern is that we could be missing out on a vendor that could save us even more than $30,000. And I'd rather, you know, we've had so many challenges with Duncan. I'd rather take a little bit more time and make the right decision with the vendor than rush into it. And just, yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say.
No, that point very well taken. And you know, should we formally issue an RFP, I would reach out to Duncan, G-Techna, and T2 to provide a proposal, and we'd publicly post it.
Yeah, I mean,
I've gotten those proposals back.
I think that feels like not only financially the right thing to do, but also just in procedurally and somewhat ethically the right thing to do to give all vendors a fair opportunity to respond. I know it's not great for our timeline, but.
Thank you, Trustee Carpenter. Trustee Warren?
Thank you. I think Trustee Carpenter stole a lot of my thunder, I think, but I was just going to say, you know, I do, you know, seeing this in the packet and looking at saving 30K, you know, like obviously in this environment, that's something you really want to do, but this is a high dollar contract. You know, we're talking over close to or over $100,000. And I think it's vital that in these types of circumstances, and in all types of circumstances, we follow our RFP policy. I think we just need to bid this out, and we need to figure out, again, if somebody comes in lower, maybe it reinforces everything that we have here. But I just think that I think we want to stay in alignment with our policy. So I'm not real comfortable proceeding with making a recommendation to go to a vendor tonight. I'd be comfortable with saying, let's RFP it out and see if if we can get it done by the end of the year, we can get it done. If we can't, we can't. But I do want to stay in alignment with our purchasing policy.
Thank you, Trustee Warren. Any other comment from the board? Trustee Stokbrand.
First, I would just like to thank Mark for taking the initiative to seek out the vendors and get the information that he did. We pretty much have de facto, we have three responses to an RFP, because if I'm not mistaken, Mark, you asked all three of them to do a presentation for you. Is that correct?
With the same standards?
Just the new vendors. We already are familiar with our existing vendor.
Okay, anyway, I'm happy to go along with the request. I'll make a motion. I would like to move that the staff put out an RFP for parking permit management services.
Software provider.
Software provider.
Can I just clarify that? Is it put out an RFP for new citation and parking management software provider. Is that okay, Kathy?
Sure.
Okay, so that's just what it says in the agenda. I'll second that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Trustee Carpenter?
Oh, no, I was saying I was still second that, so we're fine.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Any further discussion? If not, Sarah.
Yeah, I do. I just want to say I'm comfortable with getting the 3 quotes, and I'm concerned about if by the time we issue an RFP, get responses, evaluate those responses. You know, we're going to be into December, and we're not going to make a January implementation anyhow. So I mean, I'm just going to vote. I just want to explain why I'm going to vote no.
And President Rozak?
Yeah, Trustee Bach.
Yeah, I share the same concerns as Trustee Menta. And I also think that, you know, Mark's done a good job. And we all know that vendors are contacting all of us on a daily, for a variety of services. And this isn't one of them. So that I've at least been contacted. I don't know about the rest of you or Mark or others. So I'm confident with the staff's recommendation. So I will also be voting no tonight. And I don't like Duncan, don't get me wrong.
And I just want to make my comment, which is, I don't know that necessarily we won't make our timeline. We've done RFPs quickly before. My big concern, not only I echo Trustee Carpenter to a T on everything she said, but my biggest concern is that in an RFP you lay out what you want or what you're asking information for, so that you're giving and getting an answer competitively from different vendors, and you're also very clear and thoughtful about what it is you're asking for. With Duncan, I think we learned our lesson hard. It's a long-term contract, and this would be a long-term contract, and I don't want to go through that again. And I want to be very careful with parking citation management software that we understand what we're getting, we understand what we need, and that I think with a competitive process, with people responding, we'll get a better understanding of that need and what's available. And that to me is priceless when it comes to parking software from our history. So with that, is there any other comments?
I'm just going to say that I believe that this, you know, could eventually end up at, you know, more of a wasted money. I think we could lose money in this situation by, you know, by delaying it. I feel like Mark's done his research here. I don't think he's going to get us into a situation probably like it sounds like you've had with Duncan. I think he's probably learned his lesson, and you know, he's trying to get through this for a reason. So for that reason, I'm going to vote no as well.
Manager Ewell.
I just wanted to relay that, you know, Mark's desire to move forward and bringing this to tonight. You know, originally in the timeline for parking and transportation, we had thought we had come to some recommendations in July on parking, which would have allowed for sufficient time to go through an RFP process and then be coinciding with some of, you know, the budget discussions that we're having. So I, you know, want to relay that, you know, he is coming to because we're trying to work with, you know, the time constraints that we have, and he's looking forward to trying to implement, to do something that's more effective. That said, if a formal RFP is the desire of the board, do we have an ability to just execute that proposal based upon the parking direction that was provided versus waiting and coming back again 2 weeks later with a proposal and then getting it out the door? You know, typically when we do RFPs and we go through all of that process, it's about 3 months.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's just what you're hearing a little bit. It's going to take, you know, time and effort on our part, but we want to try to expedite that in the most efficient way possible.
And Rebecca, I will check with the board. We'll go around the table. Also, you can shorten the time frame for responses. We already have 3, so I'm assuming that, you know, that's legal too. So because we know we already have 3 that will respond, shortening that time frame might not be a bad idea.
Sure. Understood.
let me go around the table and see if anybody has any objection to staff writing up that RFP and sending it out without having to come back to the board. Trustee Stokebrand.
I'm in favor of that.
Trustee Warren.
I don't have an objection to that.
Trustee Ursink.
I don't have a objection to that, but I would like to, go with what's proposed
Trustee
here.
Bockhorst.
I have a clarification question. Does that include selection, or does that have to automatically come back to the board?
I mean, and we would review the responses received and provide them directly to the board with a recommendation.
Oh, okay, but meaning ultimately the board has to make the final decision once everything's been made. We can't supersede that by amending the motion and saying, we'll shorten the process.
Oh, I see.
Because ultimately, if that were the case, I would say, let's do it. Let's allow our village manager, who's probably the most qualified person here to make this decision for us.
Doesn't the board have to approve all contracts?
That's what I'm asking.
I think that's what you're asking.
But can we suspend the rules to do that? I don't know if that's ordinance or state
I don't know
statute.
if that'll save time.
We have an election coming up that's going to be a big, big, big deal, you guys.
Rebecca, would you recommend doing that? Or is it going to save us time?
The board would need to approve the contract, but what I'm suggesting is that we'd get the proposals in, review them, and then in earnest bring them to the board with our recommendation. I don't feel that, particularly in this matter, when it's so administratively driven, that, coordinating review times, I think that the coordination of the staff who's been reviewing the work that Mark has been doing is reviewing them and coming to making the best recommendations they can for how to operate with the system moving forward.
So Trustee Bockhorst.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, yeah, they'll do the choice and make a recommendation to us. But I do think that by law, we have to approve all contracts.
But what I'm also hearing is that if we're comfortable enough with that portion, that we would have a shortened discussion when it came to us as well.
We would internally, the staff would evaluate the proposals and give you as the board the recommendation.
Thank you. And nobody can say how long the discussion will go. Trustee Carpenter. Or do you have any objection to?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay, Trustee Menta.
Fine with me.
And I'm fine with that. Okay, so there is a motion. Can you read back? I can't remember what's on the table.
Yep, it is to direct staff to issue an RFP for citation and parking permit management services.
Do you need anything else, Rebecca, in that motion? Or just the agreement that you've received?
If within the motion, I'm hearing that we're going to specify that staff will issue without receiving approval of the RFP from the board and provide the board with a recommendation.
Do we need to amend the motion to say that, is what I'm asking?
No, as long as there's concurrence with what I'm communicating right now.
Yep, and I think it was.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to be clear, President Rosick, this will come before the board again.
For approval of a contractor once the bids are submitted and staff has a recommendation.
And so is this going to make it impossible to make the January start date for the parking?
That's very possible.
Oh, that's absolutely possible. There's no way that this is going to happen probably before March at this point then. And I would be extremely hesitant to launch a software program without working through the customer service implications of doing that at that time as well.
I'm not understanding.
I would agree with Mark in that if we're gonna now start the RFP process, no matter whether we expedite or not, we're still not looking for an implementation timeline then until March of 2021.
So why do we have to speed up the RFP process then?
Because just to get that work done and then logistically to implement this before we launch new parking revisions, we won't have sufficient time. And talking with the vendor, as of today, we would have been starting implementation on a new platform immediately.
I understand, but speeding up the RFP process by not having the board approve the RFP, what did that give us that you suggested? How much time did that give us?
Well, my best estimate would be it'll take some time for me to work into my schedule to do an RFP. I've got a few other items I'm working on with the budget and whatnot. Then I think it's important to give a proper response time. If we are going to actually issue an RFP, I think there's a certain, 2 to 3 weeks response time on that. And then the evaluation, if we have any new respondents, we're going to want to see a product demo. And I think that pretty much is going to take us near the end of the year. And then we're talking about entering into an agreement once approved by the board.
Great. That wasn't the question.
And that's typically 90 to 190 days or so to implement after that.
That wasn't the question, but thank you. That was just the time savings we achieved by not coming back to the board. Okay. Any other questions?
It just doesn't make sense. This just seems like we're running in circles and we're creating this chaos to end up where we're eventually going to end up. Don't you guys see we're eventually going to end up here and we're going to approve it and we're going to be totally behind on everything? It just makes no sense. It really, to me, it makes no sense. I mean, Mark's done his research here. I get it. We're going to go out RFP. We're going to give everybody a fair shake, even though we don't want to use Duncan and the other company doesn't sound that, that great as well. We're going to come back to the same point and we're going to have lost so much time. It's just, this makes no sense. It seems like a waste of time.
Thank you. I disagree. Anybody else? Trustee Carpenter.
I definitely can understand that. I can see where that, like that sentiment and that feeling can come from. But I just think, if there is a vendor who didn't know that we were potentially looking, and I also wonder if there's an opportunity for either one of these vendors that we've already talked to come back with a more comprehensive proposal that could even come back at a better price or could force us to really take a look at what we're looking for a little bit more. Like, parking is such a big deal. We have spent so much money on this proposal. Like, I just don't want to get this wrong. And I know that might make us not be on the timeline that we want. And I get that sucks and that's frustrating. And, and you're right, Trustee Ursink, we might end up back where we are, but what if we're not? And what if we missed out on an opportunity? Or what if we are and we've communicated more of what our expectations are? I just think this is something we have to get right. Otherwise, we will never hear the end of it. And parking is such a big deal here. Like, I just would rather us take a little bit more time. It might not be perfect. It might not be January, but get it right, because just like the kayak launch, parking is going to be here forever. So I'd rather us get it right.
Trustee Ursink?
So Mark, could you explain to me, just so I know, how this affects the timeline? So what's the drawback to pushing this out into mid next year? What are the disadvantages of that? If we have to go with Duncan until that point, do we have to sign another year contract with Duncan? Can we cut the contract right away and then go into another contract? What happens if we push it back into March or spring?
Well, there's a couple things. Again, the first objective is to try to make an implementation schedule that meets the board's decision that effective January 1, you'd have on-street parking. And we can't do that right now with the restrictions that it's 2 per household. So obviously, and it's a big contract, and again, there's no, if the policy is fairly clear. We don't know what we're going to get if we publicly post this. But in the effort of trying to move forward, staff has been preparing for this for the last several months. So right now I'm thinking that all other schedules and activities contemplated will probably get back to the board either the last meeting in December or maybe the first meeting in December or in January with a recommendation. Then again, once the contracts are approved, another 90 days after that to get to a point where we'd be able to, depending on again availability, where we'd be able to implement the board's program. So,
Mark?
Yeah.
I just want to, my final comment, I appreciate all the work that went into it. I think we adopted this a couple of weeks ago, and I see how much work you put into it, but it is staff's responsibility to take the adopted policy by the board and to understand that an RFP was required based on our adopted policy. And we could have been starting this RFP 2 weeks ago. And so I don't want to reprimand staff for anything, but I don't also want to lay it on the board that we have to rush and throw out a policy that is well thought out and utilized for competition reasons and to get the lowest price possible. That is why people have purchasing policies, and we have one. And because staff knows we have one, it was an oversight, I'm sure, but.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, and it wasn't an oversight. It was to give the board an option to decide if they wanted to proceed with the information we have, or, as you are currently proposing, to send it out for an RFP. So, by all means, that's the intent of bringing this before the board, to give the board the ability to weigh those issues and make that decision. So,
thank you.
Absolutely.
President Rozek, just to be clear then, if we vote in favor of this motion, we are putting the overnight parking off until at least March 1 or April 1. Is that correct?
Rebecca?
At least until March 1? Yes, based upon, from where our estimates would be at this point in time. Obviously, the vendor itself would need to clarify that. And I just also wanted to point out that right now in the purchasing policy, under purchases from 1,000 to 10,000, we have maintenance fees for computers, software contract fees that are already budgeted are exempt from the requirement to go through the price checking qualification. So again, it was staff's intent to do something productive, for the board and to ensure that you had every option in front of you.
President Rozek, I did have one other question. I'm not sure Mark answered it. Our Trustee Ursink asked a question about can we do a 6-month or 3-month addition to our Duncan contract now to get us to, if they figure out that we're going to ditch them and go with someone else in March, can we still get a partial year contract to bridge? I think you said our Duncan contract ended last year, so we apparently have a 1-year contract right now that ends at the end of the calendar year?
No, we're operating without a contract right now on a provisional extension until a final decision can be come up with for another renewal. So it's just a transition period here that gives us time to sort out exactly what our needs are. So.
So I have a question regarding implementation.
Excuse me, Trustee Strickland, were you finished?
No, I call the question.
Okay, the question has been called. So we will immediately take a roll call vote on calling the question. Is that correct?
We do need a second for call the question.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
All right, so the question was called by Trustee Stokbrand, seconded by Trustee Amenta. Please call the question for roll call vote to call the question.
Yep, this would be for staff to issue an RFP for citation and parking permit management services.
Oh, it's just to call the question, correct?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Trustee Backhorst,
No.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
Trustee Carpenter,
Aye.
Trustee Ursink,
No.
Trustee Amenta,
Aye.
Trustee Stokerbrand,
Aye.
President Rosick.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2. 5-2, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we will immediately go to the motion.
Yep.
And then take roll call.
Yep. So to approve for staff to issue an RFP for citation and parking permit management services, Trustee Warren,
Aye.
Trustee Amenta,
No.
Trustee Backhorst.
What was the motion?
Yep, for staff to issue an RFP for citation and
Thank you.
parking permit management.
No.
Nope, okay. Trustee Ursink,
No.
Trustee Stokerbrand,
No.
Trustee Carpenter,
Yes.
President Rosick.
Yes.
Motion fails 4-3.
Okay. All right. We will then go to the next item of new business, which is 9.
Hold on, does someone want to make a motion approving the contract with,
Oh, I'm sorry, because it failed. Correct. Do we have?
I don't have my split screen, so I don't have the agenda in front of me, so someone else can make a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the contract for G Techna.
Attorney Bear.
In the amount of, you have to say in the amount of.
Attorney Bear, do we need to have in the motion that we are suspending our policy as a board?
Well, you have the implicit power to do so. It's not necessarily required by statute. It's a policy. So if the board takes the action and everyone votes in the affirmative and they understand that, it's appropriate. So I don't think you need the explicit language. You have the inherent power to do that.
Okay, so go ahead then. I apologize.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract for G Techna at the price of $74,000.
Okay, and a second motion by Trustee Ursink, a second by Trustee Amenta. Any further comment? Trustee Carpenter.
I just have a question. In the packet, the recommended motion was for a 3-year service agreement. Does that need to be included in the motion?
That would be preferred.
And the amount? Would you like to?
Well, the amount is prospectively about $74,000 a year, although that's not all G Techna services.
What do you mean?
There are about $14,000 a year, and that is payment processing fees, which is not a G Techna cost, but it's just an overall cost of the process, something that the Duncan agreement has got built into their costs, but other service providers do not have that built in. So just for
entering into a contract with this provider for an amount not to exceed
$74,000.
$70,000 a year or whatever suits your purpose.
Okay.
70,000.
Sure,
I think it's the 74,000.
74.
Okay.
So do I have to amend that, or can I, do I have to amend this motion, or can I reread it?
You can ask if there's unanimous consent to amend the motion. If there is, it's so amended.
Is there unanimous consent?
Clarify, yeah. Go ahead.
So I'd like to move to approve a 3-year contract with G Techna for the amount not to exceed of $74,000.
And Trustee
Per year, right?
$74,000 per year.
Yeah, I'll second that. Yeah.
So the total contract amount is just put the total. 74,000 times 3 is
224.
okay. So for a 3-year contract, not to exceed 224, whatever the total is. Okay. And Trustee Menta, do you second that?
Yeah.
That's not right though, is it?
Whatever that total is.
222?
222, yeah.
Thanks,
Okay,
Whit.
thank you. Any further discussion? I'm just going to vote no because that's an enormous amount of money not to have put it out for competition. There could be a vendor that's of minority that's out there that we don't know about. And that's one reason we also do RFPs. And so equal opportunity to all vendors, and we are a government agency. So I will be voting no.
It could be a lifetime vendor too.
Any other comments or questions? And if not, we'll go to roll call vote.
Okay. So this would be to approve a contract with G Techna not to exceed 220,000 for 3 years.
222?
222. Trustee Amenta.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Nay.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Carpenter.
Nay.
Trustee Backhorst.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
President Rosick.
No.
Motion passes 4-3.
Okay. Great. So now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is 9B. Consider ordinance 3015, amending subsection 16-2A, membership of the Plan Commission. Bart.
So yeah, I prepared the draft ordinance in the packet tonight based on the reasons provided. We currently have a 9-member plan commission. 2 of those members have expired at the end of May, and we have been unable to replace those. So in order to help us attain quorum and administratively proceed with the functions of the plan commission, it has been my staff recommendation to reduce the number from 9, which is technically allowed, down to 7, which is the minimum requirements. And so that's the proposal before you, but I understand as the chair of JP&L, Trustee Carpenter, and as Plan Commission President Rosick probably also have comments to provide as well. So I've just prepared what essentially was the background discussion for consideration tonight.
Thank you. And just to maybe correct you, and I don't know if you stated it wrong, but we aren't unable to fill the positions to get to them. Is that correct? Because I mean, I could appoint 2 people tomorrow and send them to the board for confirmation. It was that we had talked internally and had decided that we would, since we had 2 vacancies, we would check with the board and bring it to the board to see if we could go down to the statutory required.
Correct. We have discussed that, and that's always been my preference. And so it's been delayed to this point for potential consideration of other applicants, but it always has been my preference and recommendation to do it when the new plan commissioners would have transitioned. So this was a logical time to discuss modifying the ordinance.
Thank you. Trustee Carpenter.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I support this change, and I would like to move to approve ordinance 3015, amending subsection 16-2A, membership of the Plan Commission as drafted. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay.
We have a motion by Trustee Carpenter, a second by Trustee Stokebrand. Any further discussion?
I was just out of curiosity, who are the 2 plan commissioners?
And then Trustee Backhorst.
Do we have people who've put in applications who want to be on the Plan Commission?
We have talked internally about the applicants. There are requirements by statute that certain professions, I believe for the Plan Commission, we were looking for contractors, for architects, and we reached out to a few and we're not interested. So Bart's recommendation since day one to Jessica and I, as we were discussing appointments, was to go down to the statutory requirements since we had the vacancies. And so Trustee Carpenter and I decided that we would support his recommendation and bring it to the board for a vote.
I mean, I just feel like if we, Plan Commission is one of the more important committees and commissions that we have, and I think it's an opportunity for people to take some, have a position with responsibility. It's kind of like a stepping stone in a way to possibly looking at running for office. I'm also concerned that on a 7-member commission with the president and a trustee, that would be 2 out of the 7 would be elected board members. And I don't know, I feel like board members, we already get an opportunity to weigh in on things. And I mean, if there are people who are willing to serve, I'm not sure. The only advantage I could see is that instead of having to get 4 people for a quorum or 5 people for a quorum, you only have to get 4 people for a quorum. So it's a scheduling thing. So I get that. But, on the other side, it's a matter of participation and engagement. And so unless I'm missing one of the arguments for it.
It's statutory 7. And so
Well, I know we can, but I mean, we don't have to.
I think statutorily we're required to be 7. Is that correct?
It's a minimum of 7. And so Nathan can clarify that if it's needed, but we could keep the 9 that we have if so desired. But yeah, administratively, I will just say it has been difficult, and it remains to be difficult to get opinions from 9 plan commissioners on actions to move forward with. That's more plan commissioners than we have other committees that have that same requirement. So getting quorum, getting feedback. I'm not saying we can't do it. It just, the opportunity was there when these 2 terms expired currently. So while we were reviewing the applications, that had been my recommendation. And so that's where we're at. I understand we could keep the 9 if so desired. If that were to be the case, I would at least appreciate consideration of then modifying quorum rules for plan commission. But it would still be my preference to go down to 7 for what it's worth.
Right, we meet the statutory requirements at 7.
But do we at 9, I guess was the question.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we permitted to have 9?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can, yeah, because it's not a matter of statewide concern, and the statute indicates that, based upon the way that the statute's written, you could go higher than that. And I think the other option Bart and I talked about is if there was issues with quorums, based upon the way the statute's written, I think what you could theoretically do is still make it 4 for a quorum, but then again, there'd be no point in having 9 at that point either. But.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Warren and then Trustee Carpenter.
Oh, and Trustee Backhorst.
Oh, I'm sorry, and then Trustee Backhorst.
This is another one that I'm kind of turning over in my head here. I do see Trustee Amenta's point that you really want. Ideally, you want to see as many people involved as possible. This is kind of a stepping stone committee for potential future run for office, which is great. That said, Bart, based on your feedback here, I'm leaning towards supporting this recommendation because we want our committees to function. And if you're telling me it is your recommendation to move forward in this manner, that gives me some comfort that we should reduce the number of 7.
Okay, Trustee Carpenter and then Trustee Backhorst.
And Bart, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that part of our discussion was that the reason for lowering the number from 9 to 7 was also 9 for a municipality of our size was quite large. 9 is something that you would see in a larger municipality than ours typically.
Correct. I agree that definitely did come up in terms of the necessary representation for a community of our size. I think that we do have 7 qualified plan commissioners right now, and I am comfortable with those 7, proceeding as the plan commission. So I think for a community of our size, 7 is adequate.
Trustee, go ahead, Trustee Carpenter, are you done? You're okay? Trustee Backhorst.
Okay, so a couple of things. One would be, I can understand reducing the number, just like the Conservation Committee, which I think has a pretty large amount given the village of our size. I would also like to reiterate Trustee Amenta's point, though, that for Shorewood Code, we have that the village president and one other trustee, which the village president designates. Although So if we are going to open this up and reduce the number, but still have 2 of the 7 members be elected officials and both the village president and whomever she at this point appoints, then that does really sway the course of this. I would like to see us, and maybe this is state statute or maybe this is code, I couldn't find the difference in this, but go back to, and I think it's state statute that the village president appoints and then it's confirmed by the board, or is that, this is a question for Nathan actually, or is that our own internal policy?
There's a provision in the statute about having in chapter 62 about having somebody from the discretion of the village president to appoint someone to the board. And I can't remember the exact language. I was just actually looking at the statute as you were referencing that, but really, I mean, I don't know that that really has much to do with the, sorry, lost, hello? Okay, for some reason I went blank there for a second. I mean, we had talked, Bart and I had talked, did we lose Bart? Oh wait, no, there he is, okay. My understanding was that there was some difficulty in fielding qualified candidates, and having 9 was somewhat of an issue, and then reaching quorums. So I'll defer to Bart on that, but which is really a separate issue.
Well, no, it is a separate issue entirely. That wasn't my question at all, because I understand this criteria for whom should be serving on this commission. I'm not sure who discussed this, because as I'm hearing tonight that this was a private discussion that only a couple of members, and no offense, Trustee Carpenter and President Rozek, but I don't remember this being a village board discussion. And we have moved away from a lot of the committees, commissions and stuff like that being more of a village board discussion and being more of a unilateral or being appointed, which I think runs, smack up in the face of transparency and other things. So
recommendation for an appointment. We recommend to the board, I recommend to the board for confirmation, but right now we're not recommending an appointment. We're bringing to the board a proposal.
I understand what we're doing. We are opening up the ordinance to change it right now, to change what our rules are. So when we do that, we are opening it up to change the rules. So that's one of the things that happens when you open something up. So yeah, I completely understand. So what we're doing is we're creating a resolution to amend the procedure, right? Or is this a ordinance change? I can't even remember at this point. But to amend the ordinance, thank you. Amending section 16(2)A, membership of the Plan Commission. So I imagine maybe I'm mistaken in this, Nathan, but when we open up an ordinance, just like the Constitution, I would think that we get to change other aspects. But given that that's not happening tonight, the problem and the reason I bring this up is that if we have changed a lot of the rules and we don't go through the whole JP&L committee process anymore to confirm people, and that we are now reducing and shrinking the membership of said committee, I understand at this point, we're moving down, we're losing 2. I just out of curiosity would also like, as point of order, to know which 2 we are losing, because I think that could help inform this decision on this board as well. Because sometimes policy, can be thrown out there as a great magical thing, but sometimes policy changes have incredible consequences.
We're losing, their term expired, is that correct?
Correct, their term expired and they're not eligible for reappointment. So those are the 2 that have termed out. It's Tim Hansman and Leah Blankenship.
Interesting. Okay, so then the remaining 5, but theoretically though, if we were to stay with the current 9 membership and we do not fill those 2 vacancies, because we don't in effect have the, as you've mentioned, qualified applicants, then they would continue to serve in those roles.
Correct. They've technically had to continue to serve, but they have not necessarily.
Until we bring someone to the board
and they are confirmed. Correct. So what I'm hearing though, is those are the 2 standing members that have not been appointed by this current president for the most part. So if we're looking for diversity, and I'm speaking to the whole membership here of the board, that it is an interesting thing to eliminate to the 2 that probably are the least like the current administration. I'm just going to throw that out there. And yes, until you were to bring someone and they were confirmed, which sounds like we don't have any qualified.
I do not like the insinuation, thank you. They were both very highly qualified individuals that served their terms on the Plan Commission, and I'm very appreciative of that, as is the rest of the village. I certainly am. And the reason that I'm bringing this to the board is because it was per staff, our director's recommendation. We did a long, hard consideration. I could have very well sat and brought to you 2 new appointments to fill 2 seats that terms expired, but I'm giving the option to the board. The board has every right to say, no, we want to keep it at 9, and we'll bring to you 2 more appointments.
Right. And this was heavily politicized, as we know, one of these 2 people that is being, that is on this agenda tonight. And I think all of us maybe minus 2 people understand and remember that discussion.
Her term's over, and so is Tim Hansen's. We would replace them, just like we've replaced everybody else that's termed out. We bring to you an appointment recommendation. But instead, our director has asked us to consider as a board.
Right. Our staff asked us to consider many things as a board, and we have overridden them countless times. So I appreciate that this time, President Rozek, that you want to take staff recommendation, but that has not always the case. So don't act like this is the norm.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Attorney Bear.
I just thought that this might help. I just pulled up the statute and I have it in front of me, and it references mayor, but it's adopted by reference in the section addressing the board. So it essentially applies to the village president as well. It says that the village president or mayor may appoint him or herself to the commission and may appoint other city elected or appointed officials, except that the commission shall always have at least 3 citizen members who are not city officials, which we have. So under the state, pursuant to the state statute, no matter what we do or what we decide, that's not going to change. I just thought that might help clarify the discussion.
And what does our ordinance say, just for clarification? Because we could change what Trustee Buckhorst is saying.
The other thing I forgot to mention, Bart mentioned this earlier regarding the qualifications for members. The statute also says that citizen members shall be persons of recognized experience and qualification. So you can't just say, well, you're interested, here, we'll put you on the board. So, okay, so your second question is to what specifically the Shorewood ordinances say. I'm looking that up as we speak.
Just in case we'd like to amend them.
Village code. Give me a moment here and I will pull that up. Plan Commission. It says under 16.1, there's hereby created a Plan Commission in accordance with the provisions and authority granted under 6135 and 6223. And that's just the statute that I just read out of, which are hereby adopted and incorporated by reference, which is pretty much what all municipalities do. We're bound by the statute. And then under 1612, organization powers, duties, and qualifications, that's where that makes the reference to 9 as opposed to the statutory 7.
And what does it say about the president and the trustee?
It says the membership of said commission shall include, I think it's sub A here, the village president as chairman, a village trustee, and 7 citizen members who shall be residents of the village and appointed with confirmation by the board, which is again pursuant to the statute.
Okay. So Trustee Buckhorst, to your point, if you'd like to change the president is not the chair, that's by ordinance, or that there is not a trustee on the commission, that's by ordinance.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, I was also looking at the state statute as well regarding that. And what the ordinance doesn't say is that's a maximum number. The state, if I'm not mistaken, Nathan, that the state statute dictates that at least 3 members must be residents, but that doesn't prohibit any president from adding more trustees to said board.
Well, yeah, I think that that's true. It says the mayor or village president may appoint him or herself and may appoint other city elected or appointed officials, except that the commission shall always have at least 3 citizen members who are not city officials. So that's pursuant to 6223. And it does say, it begins by saying that the City Plan Commission, or in this case, the Village Plan Commission, it says to consist of 7 members, but then at the end of that section, it says the council or board may by ordinance provide that the membership of the commission shall be provided as thereunder. So the interpretation of that is because it's not an issue of statewide concern, that it was appropriate that municipalities have a different number than 7, which may in this case was obviously greater. But that's the mandate of the statute. So we can't, under the statute, we can't remove the power of the village president to appoint him or herself or other city or elected officials. But as long as we have to make sure though that we have at least 3 citizen members pursuant to 6223.
Right, we could say that the requirement of the village ordinance, however, would be that the supermajority or X amount would be non-elected or appointed officials. Regardless,
I see. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
This issue because for a variety of reasons, but I would say for the point of diversity and everything else that I guess it's like the Supreme Court is how I'm going to look at this. That's the analogy I'm going to draw. That the remaining officials that serve on this plan commission, if I'm not mistaken, have all been appointed under this current presidency. I could be wrong. Maybe Barbara Kayla Miller was under President Johnson. If she still serves on
She was, yeah.
If she still serves on the plan commission, I'm not even sure about that. So, I mean, just for diversity's sake, you know, homogeneity is, I would say that diversity is always very important, but I will acquiesce. I know it's late and we have a very important closed session. So I won't be supporting this for a variety of reasons. I think this is a more thoughtful discussion if we're going to be changing ordinance, and especially something this powerful, as President Rosick had said, that I don't want to consolidate power ever. However, you know, we'll probably have a new presidency next year, considering President Rosick has announced that she's not running again. And then we can always reopen this discussion at that time.
Okay. Trustee Stokebrand?
No, I'm just ready to vote.
Trustee Menta?
Commissioner Wickland and Barb Kylie Miller were both appointed by President Johnson. That's 2 out of 5.
Thank you. Okay. With that, no further discussion. Do we have a motion on the table?
We do.
Okay, could you just reread it and then we'll take the vote?
Yep. To approve ordinance 3015, amending subsection 16-2A, membership of the Plan Commission. Trustee Bachhorst.
No.
Trustee Carpenter.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
No.
Trustee Amenta.
No.
President Rosick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-3.
Okay, thanks for that. We will now move on to new business 9C, to consider resolution 2020-34, moving central count processing for wards 1 through 12 to the Shorewood High School, 1701 East Capitol Drive, Shorewood, for the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Menta, second by Trustee Bachhorst. Any further discussion? We have had this discussion, is that correct? Before, Trustee Carpenter.
Sorry, I have 2 questions that I've had from residents relating to this. Can you confirm that we cannot start counting absentee ballots until that morning, election morning? Is that correct?
Is correct.
Okay. And then any absentee ballots that are dropped in the white box behind Village Hall are counted and included, just like any that you receive in the mail, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So we check that box till 8 p.m. that night. And then we, anything that's dropped off at the polling locations or at Village Hall, as long as it's in our hands with proper signatures by 8 p.m., it is counted.
Okay, Trustee Warren.
Sorry, a related question, and I'm not asking anyone to do anything, just to be clear, but when we say we can't start counting till election day, could we theoretically start counting at 12:01?
No. 7 a.m.
We have to wait till the polls open.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, says it in the statute, polls open.
Correct. So we can go later after 8 p.m., but
Yeah.
we can't do anything before 7.
And she will.
And do you think that you will get through all of our absentee ballots on Tuesday?
We will. We're making every effort to come up with the best teams possible. Having this space so that everybody can be in one room is super helpful. So.
And Sarah, you said you could go as long as you needed to go, as long as you didn't start before a certain time?
Correct. So, yep, as long as we start at 7, we hope to be wrapped up by 8. We are going to use Badger books. We have large teams, so, and 3 machines processing, so we should be okay.
Trustee Ursing?
Sarah, do you still need help with poll workers and everything else?
We actually don't. So we've had a huge outpour of people volunteering. We're kind of sending them to Milwaukee or other neighboring municipalities. So great for Shorewood, yay for everybody, but we are sufficiently staffed.
Okay, if you need anybody, please just reach out.
Perfect, thank you.
And I had a question. So the polling places are the North Shore Presbyterian Church and the Village Center, right?
Correct. And Central Count is open to the public for anybody that wants to observe the processing of the ballots. So.
Isn't there 3 polling locations? 2?
It's just 2. We combined the high school and the Village Center back in like June or July, I can't remember, for the next 2 elections, since the majority is absentee ballots.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? With that, go ahead and call the roll.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Amenta.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Carpenter.
Aye.
President Rosick.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is it reports? Yep, reports from village officials, village president.
Oh, sorry, President Rosick, can we go into closed session and then do the reports?
I don't have a report, so does the trustees have any reports?
Well, fine, I'll make my report since we're doing it now. To go off of what Sarah had mentioned regarding volunteers, City of Milwaukee is still looking for employees for election day. There's a training, and it's basically doubled in what you can get paid. So I think a full day is like $230, but it's also more for, a very rewarding experience, and there are a variety of opportunities. So you can go on the Milwaukee Election Commission webpage, or if you want information, you can contact me as well. And I will be at Central Count probably all night in Milwaukee.
Thank you. Any other trustees have a report? If not, village manager? No report? Okay, any items for future consideration? Trustee Backhorst.
I think that I know that we had this. I just want to kind of solidify this. I'd like our minutes to be shortened, and we waste a lot of time on the minutes, and we brought up a variety of reasons. So I don't know when that's scheduled to go on the items of future consideration, but with budget season coming up and the fact that I've heard a lot of people talking about reductions in operating costs, and i.e. employees.
Asking Rebecca or making a motion? When is it scheduled for, Rebecca? Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Still on mute.
Still on mute.
Sorry about that. I was trying to do 2 things at once. We're going to be sending out an updated list of those agenda items for future consideration so the board can rank those. And if you identify that as one that you want at the top of the list, you will have an opportunity to do so. And we'll be bringing that forward for your review at the beginning of October. But until then, our standing committee time has been placed with the budget.
Okay.
Well, I would feel that this would be a budgetary item because it does involve staff time, and we're talking about operational reductions in our budget.
Do you have a motion that you'd like to make for future agenda items?
Yes, I'd like to move to place minutes discussion on the list, the budget list, I guess, as far as a discussion item, because it is a policy item, and yeah, I guess that's basically it.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I don't,
I would
how's
just-
that, how's
I
that
would
a
just like
budget
to-
issue?
I would just like to say that I think the minutes are extremely important, and the more detailed they are, the more helpful they can be. It's important to at least give the gist of the votes and present different opposing sides of the debate. And I would not be in favor of turning them into just motions and votes.
Trustee Stokbrand, we'll have that discussion at a future date. At this moment, we're voting whether or not to put minutes into the budget discussion, or if we should leave it in with all other future agenda items to rank at our October meeting.
I'm confused about what kind of budget, like, are you suggesting adding money to the budget for like more contractors to do minutes? I mean, how is it a budget issue?
I understand the confusion there. No, actually, I'm looking at this as a budget reduction potential, because I think that Sarah has mentioned that it usually takes about a full staff day after each board meeting to go through the minutes and transcribe the minutes. So we're talking about a reduction in hours, potentially 8 to 10 hours every, so 20 hours a month, basically. And we could,
so we would reduce the clerk's salary by 8 to 10
I
hours.
never said that. That's good thinking, though. I see where your mind is going. But no, in the grand scheme of things, when we're looking at operational costs and all these other, okay, that's okay if you guys want to keep our staff time at it as is without this kind of discussion and look for ways where we can save money.
I'm just wondering if it belongs in a budgetary discussion, if there's any budgetary implications.
A policy decision, right? And
okay. Okay. So yes, she feels it does, Trustee Amenta. Okay. Any further discussion? And can you reread the motion and the second, and we will take a vote.
Yep. Moved by Trustee Bachhorst, second by Trustee Ursink to add minute discussion onto the budget list.
Okay, and I will be voting no, because I believe that we have it on our future agenda list, and that it is we've been asking for this conversation. We will not have time in budget to be talking about what we want in and out of minutes when we're trying to decide budgetary implications of other things that actually have impacts.
But President Rose, it's more about staff time that's associated with it. So there's a monetary value to that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, please take the roll call.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Amenta.
No.
Trustee Stokebrand.
No.
Trustee Carpenter.
No.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
President Rosick.
No.
Motion fails 4-3.
Okay, so now we will move into closed session.
Oh, have we done items for future agenda yet?
That's what we're on. Do you have one, Trustee Mento?
I want to make a motion to reconsider the vote that we took on parking last time. So I guess I'm doing it here so we could schedule it for our next meeting. Because I do feel we need to, in thinking about it further, I think we really need if we're going to approve more overnight parking, we need to implement alternate side of the street at the same time, especially if we're thinking about doing it during winter months. So that's, I mean, I guess my thought is if it's only a couple people on a block, it's probably not that big of a deal, which it may be. In my neighborhood, I don't think there'll be that many people, but in other neighborhoods, I think it could be quite a lot of people. And, you know, the only alternate side is between 3 and 5. So between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., cars could be anywhere. So in the times that DPW is out trying to sweep the street, clear the snow, pick up leaves, pick up garbage, there would conceivably be cars on both sides of the street, which A is going to make it difficult for DPW, and B is going to make it, it makes in many streets very difficult for cars to even pass if there's people parked on either side. So I know the idea was let's start with one thing and then go to alternate side, deal with alternate side later. But I feel like doing it before we're doing them separately that way is gonna, I don't think is going to work. So I'd like to move to reconsider that decision.
I would second that.
Okay, so moved by trustee Menta, seconded for future agenda, or to reconsider by trustee Carpenter. Do we have any discussion?
What is she talking about? Parking lot?
Trustee Warren and then trustee Bachhorst. You're on mute, I'm sorry.
See, question for the village attorney. I was not at that meeting.
You can still vote. I think we've asked this question before, but go ahead.
Right. If I may, just for a moment, just so everybody understands what they're voting on. We have a ordinance on this. It says it shall be in order for any member voting with the prevailing side to move for reconsideration of the vote on any question immediately after the vote or at the next succeeding meeting. So this is what I call the Groundhog Day motion. What it does is it takes you back to 6 in the morning when the alarm goes off. It takes you back to where the board was just before the vote was taken. So a yes vote gets rid of the previous passage of the motion, and it takes the board collectively back in time to where the board was gonna vote on it, and right on that precipice. So, but the problem is the reconsideration is just to take you back to that point, and then you're correct that we need to properly notice that so that any citizens that would want to weigh in on the reconsidered vote would have proper notice in the agenda, and then they could appear at the next meeting when it would be agendized. And then you would go back to that point, and then you would vote again.
Okay, clarify for me for 1 second. If the vote today is to reconsider and it goes down and the majority says yes of the board, you don't have enough time to give notice to put it on the next agenda?
Oh, no, you would, right. I just mean you wouldn't be voting tonight. Yeah.
No, you're not voting tonight, but we
Right.
put it.
Yeah, that's all I was saying.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other, trustee Bachhorst, did you have?
Yeah, so which parking issue? The vendor or the decision we made last month for overnight on-street parking?
The decision we made at our last meeting about allowing overnight parking with alternate side between 3 and 5 a.m. Which another issue I realized was that like on most streets in the village, we're going to still have the existing winter parking, which means you can only park on one side of the street. So we're giving people conflicting. We're saying, okay, you can park on the street, but you have to go to alternate sides, but you can't park on that side of the street. So I mean, I just started thinking about it, and it's like it is not clear, smooth, clean, easily understood, so that it can be implemented easily.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. So, this exists in so many different municipalities where people have alternate side street parking. So I understand that some people might be confused by this, but a lot of people really aren't, if that's what I'm understanding from what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Carpenter?
Yeah, I mean, I am just using my own block as an example. So we have the winter guidelines, and one of the big complaints that I had heard from residents is that it snows in April or snows on Halloween, and we say December to March, and then we're also having alternate side parking, but only from 3 to 5. So you can't park on one side of my street from December to March. It's just very confusing, and I just think I would rather us say be like Milwaukee, where it's on even days you're on this side and odd days you're on the other side. Get rid of the winter parking from December to March. I mean, I felt that way when we had the original discussion. So I just think it's going to be very confusing to residents.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, will this have any impact on the software if the majority of the board votes to reconsider?
I'll have to touch base with Mark tomorrow. I don't believe that he's on the call any longer tonight.
The reason I ask is if it goes down that way, then I would make a motion to reconsider that vote too. Okay. All right, so without further discussion, do you want to take the roll call?
Sure.
You read
So
the
this
motion,
is-
please.
Yep, this is to reconsider the vote on parking from the September 8th meeting.
So there was a second?
There was.
Yep,
Okay,
Amenta and
okay.
Carpenter. Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
Trustee Stokebrand,
Yes.
Trustee Warren,
Trustee Warren,
Can you come back to me?
Trustee Backhorst,
No.
Trustee Amenta,
Yes.
Trustee Carpenter,
Yes.
Trustee Ursink,
No.
President Rosick,
you gotta do Warren first.
Trustee Warren,
No.
President Rosick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-3.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion under future agenda items to reconsider the vote we took tonight on the software for parking. If there's no second, it will fail.
Can I, well, I'll second just for discussion purposes. So you're saying if we're reconsidering, we have time now to do an RFP? I mean, I hope that we decide to go forward with alternate side at the same time, which, from my conversations with staff, is probably would require a little more consideration. So it is pushing things out maybe till March, April, or May.
It is. And I just want to say that reconsidering that vote, and I took that yes of mine very seriously, because more than anything, I wanted to finish out my term with this passed. But I do think, and I've always thought that alternative sides should be considered at the same time, winter regulations and parking. And so I could not say no to that reconsideration. But with that reconsideration, we've opened up everything in that parking vote, including the residency requirement or the 2-person per household. That we have not voted on parking yet. And so for that, I cannot, in my conscience, vote for a vendor to do our parking citation and throw out our purchasing policy for no reason, since we do not have a policy on parking at this moment.
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, so I second.
Jesus.
Does anybody else have any thoughts?
I do. This is Trustee Backhorst. So what do you guys envision this is going to look like? Because this smells to me like a ill-performed, what's that called? All right, so we're reconsidering this vote so that we can look at alternate side parking, but you guys just didn't want to amend it to change that. So anyway,
So
I
this,
hope, Trustee Carpenter, this isn't shenanigans, because this it smells pretty funny to me.
well, this motion that we're talking about right now is the motion on the software, the contract on the software.
Correct. And the reason that we're doing this now is because
We just voted.
just surprisingly, we reconsidered a big discussion that took us like 3.5, 4 hours at the last board meeting. And
Such a waste of time.
so surprising, all of a sudden you guys so quickly fell in line without any discussion.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Interesting observation, I guess.
You know, I mean, I think, can I just,
Go for it. Go for it. Get your jab in, love.
you know, I don't know why conversations have to, we can't, you know, I thought about it a little more deeply. I did have a conversation with Trustee Carpenter, and she's the only trustee I spoke to about this. You can ask Trustee Stokerbrand and President Rozak, I did not even discuss it with 3. I only discussed it with 1.
No walking
We both
quorum.
had, will you let me talk? We both had reservations and we made a motion to reconsider. I don't know why you always need to make it negative, personal, and nasty. Okay?
That's right.
Why?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Amenta. And with that, if there's no further constructive conversation, we will go to the vote. Clerk.
Yep. So this would be to reconsider the vote on the software contract for parking that was decided tonight. Trustee Carpenter.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Stokerbrand.
Aye.
Trustee Ursing.
No.
Trustee Bachhorst.
No.
Trustee Menta.
Yes.
President Rozak.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay. Is there any other items for future agenda?
I would like to discuss walking quorum and maybe have a little discussion on what we're able to talk. So I'd like to put on a future agenda item. Maybe a tutorial or something that would definitely benefit the new trustees and future presidents about what constitutes a walking quorum and what we're able to discuss outside of the boardroom.
So a motion to place on a future agenda an item to discuss a tutorial for.
Not to discuss, I'd like a presentation by the village attorney or some other body to give us an idea, or it could be the League of Wisconsin Municipalities.
This is a future agenda item, so we will discuss.
I do understand. To discuss what? Yes, I'd like us to understand.
To discuss having a consultant coming in to give us.
I didn't say consultant.
Anyone to get a tutorial.
Yes, I'd like us to discuss as a board what we expect and the rules that we're going to follow regarding walking quorums, and maybe even just to define a walking quorum, because I'm not sure if everyone here understands.
And I won't interrupt. Go ahead.
Sorry, what? Do you want to reiterate what I said or rephrase it for me? I mean, I'm not sure. It's hard to complete a sentence when you're interrupting.
Okay, it is 10:34. We have an attorney waiting. I heard a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Could you reread the motion, please?
Sarah, I'd be happy to reread what I have.
Okay, go ahead.
Trustee Bachhorst moved to provide education by the village attorney or some other body on a walking quorum on the list, to be listed on the list.
As a future agenda item, okay. Do we have a second? Seeing none, motion fails. Does anyone else have an item for future agenda? Okay, then we will thank you all for your participation. We will now go to item number 12, closed session. The village board will adjourn into closed session pursuant to 19.851G to confer with the legal counsel on strategy regarding pending litigation regarding the estate of Jonah. I can't pronounce the last name. Anyone want to help me here?
Marciniak.
Marciniak, thank you.
Second.
Okay. Do we need a
Do
vote?
we have to do a roll call vote on going into closed session?
Trustee Menta.
Yeah, aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes, please.
Trustee Carpenter.
Yes.
Trustee Ursing.
Yes.
Trustee Stokerbrand.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
President Rozak.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, motion passes. We are now in closed session. Can clerk, can you make?
Don't we have a different link, right?
Correct. We have a different link. So we will see you in a minute.
Okay, see you in a minute. Thank you.